The agenda is sponsored by Newcastle County Government. This week on the agenda, we got a chance to speak with Kate Hackett, the Executive Director and Head of the Delaware Wildlands. We discussed the way that climate change has affected and will continue to affect Delaware's wildlands and the surrounding areas.
So where are we, Kate?
We are at Delaware Wildlands Taylor's Bridge Land Complex. It's about 6,000 acres of protected land, and it is providing high-quality wildlife habitat and opportunities to filter our air supplies and our water supplies.
So you've been able to see firsthand about climate change and everything that's going on. You have a test bed right here.
Right. 5 years ago, I used to say, if you don't believe climate change is happening, come out here and see. So I think the easiest thing for us to see on our lands is when we have sea level rise, the saline water washes onto our farm fields, deposits salt, and then our farmers can no longer produce a viable crop on those properties. So we're actually seeing the sea level rise destroy our coastal farmland.
So how many farms are here on this property or around here that are associated with your organization?
That's a great question. We stopped kind of tracking them by farm because it became easier by acreage. But we have most of our farmland here in Newcastle County. We also have farmland in Kent County, and we have a sustainable forestry operation in Sussex County. And all of those operations, we are actually working to increase the resilience of those operations. So here you see the tidal salt marsh.
Right.
And it serves not only as kind of the kidney for water quality and filtering out pollutants, but it also provides a buffer. So when sea levels do rise and when we have storm surge coming from the bay, it protects the farmland over here.
So what's the issue with the saline rise, and how does that affect the crops? How does that affect, what's the problem?
Right, that's a great question. So with regard to agriculture, once we have salt water intruding on our agricultural lands, you can't produce your agricultural crops anymore. So we're losing farmland, we're losing the ability for our farmers to make a living from agriculture, and we're losing kind of that breadbasket of the Delmarva Peninsula. So there's that component of it. We also are having pretty severe infrastructure problems. So
talk to me about those.
Yeah, so Delaware Wildlands owns 21,800 acres of land throughout the state. So we are up and down kind of these out of the way roads all of the time. The best one is the causeway just outside of the town of Odessa, which it used to flood once in a blue moon, right? Not very often. It is very common in a full moon or a king tide now for that causeway to be closed from sea level rise. So then we have to go around, right? That causes problems for emergency services, for people who are trying to get to work, and then the floodwaters can even undermine the integrity of that infrastructure also. So it's a multi-tactical problem, not just for our natural environment, but for our built environment also.
And farming is not cheap. Right?
No, it's not.
It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of manpower, and how does this affect our farmers? Are they having to, I guess, repeat work? Is it affecting their work?
Absolutely. So it used to be that in the spring, our farmers would plant once and their crops would germinate and mature. In recent years, our farmers sometimes have to go back and plant 3 times because of this. Yes, 3 times because of the intensification of storms associated with climate change actually drown out the seed or even wash it away. So then they have to come back, deploy their equipment and their personnel, and replant up to 3 times. It's a difficult market.
Yeah. So what can be done? What is needed?
Everything is needed, right? It is not an easy solution, and I think sometimes people can be disenfranchised by that. But anything that we can do to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels, carpooling is now an important thing to do again. For us as a nonprofit organization, people donate to us so that we can roll that money up into larger scale projects where we can protect land, thousands of acres, and restore it to sequester carbon, to provide stormwater buffers and protection for inland residences, farms, and infrastructure.
So infrastructure-wise, Kate, if you had your genie came and said you have 3 wishes, right, in regards to infrastructure, in regards to climate change, what would you ask for? What would Delaware Wildlands ask?
Sure. I would ask for the opportunity to do more wetland and salt marsh restoration. They are great carbon sinks. They absorb stormwater, so when we have rising tides and rising sea levels, they'll absorb some of that and protect our infrastructure. So that would be my first one. I would say any money that we can use to deploy green infrastructure as opposed to gray infrastructure.
And what's gray infrastructure for those that don't know?
Absolutely. Gray infrastructure are our roads, our water treatment systems, our wastewater treatment systems, all of that built infrastructure. We can actually do the same things with nature, but we can do it better and we can do more of it. Right? So science and evolution has helped our natural resources already know to filter out pollutants from our water resources. We don't have to build those infrastructure, and we can do more if we use our natural systems. So more money for green infrastructure projects would be another one. And for people really to take action, to come out and vote on these issues, to talk to their legislators. And Senator HANSEN is a great one. She is a great champion of the environment, of trying to move climate change actions forward and getting what we need in our communities.
Now we get a chance to speak with Hannah Small and Brigham Whitman at the Delaware Wildlands Robert Farms, where they describe the process of their reforestation project.
So here we're at Delaware Wildlands Roberts Farm, where we are beginning a large-scale reforestation project that will ultimately connect 90 acres of forested wildlife habitat that will really create a wildlife corridor.
Again. 1, 2, 3. We start to plan this project before we even get out to the field. We look at the natural ecology of the surrounding landscape, and we pick the species of trees that we want to plant based on what's already here. We want to mimic the natural environment that would be here. So after we select the trees, we go and we select these areas for deer exclosures. Looking at the topography and the soil conditions, we place the exclosures where we want to put the more vulnerable tree.
So here in this 17-acre ag field, we're planting a total of 7,000 trees. And this fall, we're going to do 4,000 of them and then finish it up in the spring with another 3,000.
Again.
So those trees go inside, they're protected from deer, we wrap them in a fence, and then outside the exclosures, we put more trees that might be able to better sustain a little bit of deer browse.
With the reforestation project underway, we had a chance to speak with Senator Stephanie HANSEN, where she talked about the different programs in Delaware that help turn over the climate change curve.
Provinces grew up in, and it actually dates back to the
1700s.
Yeah, you go back and take a look at the old maps of Middletown and this area from many, many years ago. You'll see the other farms.
And this was here.
This was here.
Let DART do the driving. DART First State provides transportation that is clean, safe, reliable, and affordable. Plan your trip and get real-time bus information with the free DART Transit app. Scan your phone to pay your fare with the free DART Pass app. So what are you waiting for? Try transit today. Visit dartfirststate.com or call 1-800-652-DART.
Auto accident? medical negligence, work injury. Contact Team Tice, your Delaware personal injury lawyers. Leroy Tice in Wilmington, Delaware, serving and supporting the people of Delaware. Call 302-489-2400. That's 302-489-2400. Online at teamtice.com.
This message is brought to you by Newcastle County Government.
Many wonder, what is a variant? A variant is a mutation or a change in the genetic sequence of the virus. Some of our methods of treating COVID-19 become ineffective. If we were to simply get vaccinated, we could decrease the spread and the likelihood that a mutation would form in the first place. Let's get vaccinated.
Senator Hansen, we're here on the Roberts farm. You're not a stranger here.
Right.
You've been here before.
Yes, I have.
Delaware Wetlands is one of your pet projects, I would say, or one of, I guess, your allies in regards to climate change and some of the legislation that you're pushing forward.
Absolutely. They're a great organization. They have done so much to conserve really our sensitive areas that we have, our environmentally sensitive areas, but then also to promote conservation. They have 2 large tree plantings that they're getting ready to do to actually connect 2 sections of forested area here so that we can provide a wildlife corridor in an area that hasn't existed that way for hundreds of years. So they're great partners.
So legislatively, dealing with climate change, you can't pick up any newspaper, you can't listen to CNN, any of your news outlets and not know that climate change is an issue. You can see examples of climate change in California, you can see it in Texas, Louisiana, and even right here in Delaware. And we spoke to Kate Hackett, who's running the organization here, and she's explained to us very eloquently about issues that are affecting here, and some, I guess, resolution would be through funding and initiatives that the state can provide. So what have you done in regards to that?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest things that that we've been able to do this past year, I sponsored 2 bills. One increased our state's percentage of renewable energy in our renewable energy mix. So if you go to your living room and you flip on your switch, the electricity that flows to there comes from many different sources. It's currently made up of, in large, coal, natural gas, and nuclear. And then there's a percentage of it that are also renewables as well. So this legislation says that we have to have a 40% renewable component in that energy mix by 2035. So that really gives us a goal to look to do. The second piece of legislation that I did created the community solar program, really, that we have at the state of Delaware now. So in order for us to get to a higher percentage of renewable energy in our energy mix, we have to come up with ways to do that. One way to do that here in Delaware is through solar projects. Whether it's solar on roofs, solar in fields, solar on parking lots, solar wherever it makes sense financially for us to put it. And so what the community solar bill did that we just passed and the governor just signed about 2 months ago or so now, is that it creates a program where it will smaller solar arrays are put in place to benefit not just one home, but for a group of homes. Up to 800 to 1,000 homes can benefit from one particular array. Because many folks, particularly in our more challenged communities, may not have a home, they're renting, so they can't put solar on the roof, or maybe they do have a home but they can't afford solar, or maybe sometimes they just don't want solar on your roof. So where else can you take advantage of that? And being able to take advantage of that is then going to depend on being part of a community solar project that's in your area. So this bill really kind of sets the stage for community solar projects going forward.
So is this a bipartisan issue, or are you getting any pushback from anyone, or is it everyone just assumes? I mean, this isn't Scotland, where our president was at this week, where they were kind of singing Kumbaya and figuring out how to do this. But here in Delaware, what type of, I guess, feedback are you getting from the folks down in the legislature?
The way that I have gone about doing the legislation is to create a broad stakeholder group that includes all the voices at the table. In the past, this has been, as you can imagine, a fairly partisan issue. The Renewable Portfolio Standard Bill and the Community Solar Bill, however, have been quite bipartisan in nature, particularly the Community Solar Bill, which I believe passed unanimously down in the General Assembly. I believe it was unanimous just this past year. We may have missed one over in the House out of 62, but it was close if it wasn't unanimous. And that's because it comes to how you do legislation, what you believe in. What I believe is that not one party knows it all, right? Nobody knows it all, and these are huge, big issues. And you have to get everyone at the table that has a real interest and expertise in this issue, and make sure that we are all learning together, and then coming to solutions together. When you do things that way, you end up with bipartisan bills just by their very nature, and that's what we're doing right now. That's what we did with the Community Solar Bill. We're now working on another bill regarding, it's called net metering, that's following the same path. I have an energy stakeholders group that includes about 20 different interests that are on there.
What does that group, what's the charter for that group, so to speak?
This is a group that I put together that is made up of representatives from our state agencies. So we've got folks from the Department of Natural Resources that's on there, from the governor's office that are on there, but also from our utilities. So Delmarva Power, our DMEC, which is the Delaware Municipal Electric Corporation. We've got the Delaware Co-op. So it's all three of our energy utilities in the state of Delaware. Plus our sustainable energy utility, our renewable energy task force, our environmental community and environmental groups like the Sierra Club are a big part of it, as well as the conservative, really conservative think tank for our state. The Caesar Rodney Institute is a part of that. Because again, you have to make sure that everyone that has a piece of this, has an interest in this, and expertise are all talking, and we all understand the size of the problem and feel a sense of urgency to move things forward.
So in the Assembly, do we understand that sense of urgency down in Dover? Or do they just acknowledge the fact that things are changing, that things have to be done, or is it just one side of the room?
No, I think that there is a general understanding that things are changing and we have to move. Really, the questions are how fast and whose ox is getting gored at any particular time.
Right.
So, you know, how fast goes to the question of, well, we could meet all of our renewable energy goals really quickly if we just filled every farm field with solar panels that we had. We probably don't want to do that, though, because then we lose our agricultural community, we lose the ability to then help to keep up the chickens that we have. That's a whole new section of our economy. And maybe that's not the best way to build a workforce either. So we have to make sure that we're looking to not put all of our eggs in one basket, but continue to look at things like hydrogen production, at wind, perhaps offshore wind. We have a study that's currently going on wind at the Special Initiative on Offshore Wind through the Department of Natural Resources. There's a contract there that's looking. So, you know, we have a lot of things that are right here with us right now, but that are also coming online as well.
So in, I guess, our current terms now, we have a tremendous amount of money that's coming down the pipeline from the state. We have a tremendous amount of money in regards to infrastructure that's coming down. Can any of that benefit what's going on here in regards to climate change and doing some things? And do you know of any funds that have been obligated or allocated to do so?
I don't know specific funds that have been obligated to do so. But I am certainly hoping that we're going to be able to use those funds. We have to make sure that we're using them in the right way. So here's what we're finding right now, and here's where we need money to help. And we're going to be looking for money to help.
Well, this is the
It's
place
in-
to say it.
Yes, it's grid modernization, okay? So right now, we have opened the door to solar in the state of Delaware. We had a lot of people that were kind of looking at Delaware and then looking away because we didn't have a community solar program or really kind of the legislative push to get this done. Now we do. Now we've got both of those things, and we have a lot of people that are in line, knocking at the door, filling out applications. So many, in fact, that we have certain areas of our state where they're like, whoa, time out. We don't know as a utility whether we have enough capacity in our grid to accept all of the solar that's going to be coming in. So now we're having to look at, well, okay, where are the choke points in our grid, in our Delmarva grid, our DMEC grid, our Delaware Co-op grid, because upgrades to the transmission stations and upgrades to that grid cost money. You know, wires are only so big, right? You look at the electric wires, there's a finite amount of energy that can travel over those wires at any particular time. Things like solar, energy sources like solar and like wind aren't constant. So you're going to have some days when the wind blows really hard and the sun shines really great and you've got more energy than you can use and even put on those wires. And then you have other times where it's dark, so you don't have solar, the wind's not blowing. So it looks like this. The important thing is for us to be able to build and fund R&D on battery storage so that we can capture that energy when it is high, a lot of wind, when there is a lot of sun, you can capture it and then release it at times when it's dark and when it's not blowing. We don't really have that right now. So what we need money for, grid modernization to find out where our choke points are. Money to upgrade where those choke points are, smart inverters, new stations that have the equipment in it that can help us with that, and battery storage, the building of batteries specifically to capture the extra energy that we know is there and that right now is just having to go back into the ground. It's grounded because we don't know, we don't have the capability to handle it. That's where the choke point is right now.
So what's stopping us from getting those, I guess, getting the money and getting that done? Are there any obstacles, or is it just having the funds available to do it?
Doing the study to find out where you need it, number one.
Okay.
But right now, that's the big issue that we're looking at. We know that there are choke points, but the question is, so where are they? Where are they all?
Gotcha.
And then putting dollars to, okay, and this is how much we need to upgrade this section here. I mean, we know right now, the Amazon facility at Boxwood, there's a new large Amazon warehouse. My understanding is, from what I have heard, they wanted to put a large solar array on top of that roof. But in order for that energy then to get onto the grid that can then be used, they needed the capacity to put on 5 megawatts of energy. The lines only had the capacity to handle 2 megawatts of energy. The cost to then upgrade that system was more than the project could bear, so now they're not doing solar panels on there. So we've lost that right away. But that's one example, and only one example.
Right.
We have a lot more places in our state right now. Seaford and the town of Middletown, neither of those two municipalities are allowing, at this point, net metering, which is, if you put solar panels on your roof, a lot of times a company will say to you, this is going to work out for you financially because, number one, all the solar on your roof is going to lower your bill. Absolutely will. But you can also then sell that back to the grid, and it comes back to you in the form of additional money. That's called net metering, when you sell it to the grid and it comes back. But there are municipalities right now that are no longer accepting net metering. So you don't have that, and that's Middletown, and it's the city of Seaford. So we're looking into, like, well, why is that the case? We know that in Middletown, there is currently a state law, it's in code, that says if you're a utility and you reach 5% of the of electricity coming in is destined for net metering. Once you get that 5% line, we're going to allow you to no longer accept more net metering.
Okay.
I believe that was put in place because there was a concern that, with the chaotic nature, the fluctuating nature of renewable energy, they weren't sure how, if you got above 5% of your total mix being fluctuating like that, what was that going to do? So that 5% was put in place. We're looking right now at removing that 5%. Should it be completely lifted? Should it go to 6, 7, 10, 50%? So right now, that's specifically what the Energy Stakeholders Group is looking at that I just mentioned to you about. So we had Delmarva do some initial cost estimates to say if we want to change that, we want to move that from 5% to 10%, how much would that cost? They've done some preliminary calculations. They've said that that's going to cost from 5% to 10% is going to cost an additional $5 million.
Wow.
That then has to be spread among everybody else that doesn't have solar. Because it's the cost of the grid, it's the cost of our energy programs that we fund, it's the cost of all sorts of public programs that we have around renewable energy and helping folks get energy for their homes. So now we're looking into, well, how real is that? Is it really? Because it looks to be for every percentage above 5% net metering is another $1 million that has to be then cross-subsidized and picked up by all the other ratepayers. First of all, let's check in those numbers. I mean, we got to have let's all make sure that we understand that those are real numbers and we agree with that. And then if that's the case, well, how do you solve that?
Right.
I mean, there are various ways. We're not blazing any new territory here in Delaware. We're not at the very back of the pack, but these are issues that other states have looked at as well. And they've looked at things like, well, not net metering back at a retail rate. You may sell your energy onto the grid, but the value of that's not going to come back to you at the retail rate of electricity. Maybe it comes back to you at wholesale. Or maybe you could sell, you do get money back, but there is a percentage of your bill that's non-bypassable because it is for these public purpose programs that help everyone else that don't have solar at this point.
So this, I guess, reserve that you have here started in protection, right? And preventing something from, tell us a little bit about what that was.
Sure. So Delaware Wildlands is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, and the genesis of the organization was actually concern over development of the area. And even then, the impacts of development on our estuaries and our tidal wetlands, they're very productive in terms of benefits for water quality, but also for fisheries and other things. So the founder of Delaware Wildlands knew that Shell Oil wanted to construct a refinery here where we are. This was when there were a lot of investments in the highway system and muscle cars were coming out, right? So it was very popular, and Shell Oil wanted to support that burgeoning economy. But the founder of the organization recognized that it would forever destroy what we see around us. So he worked with willing landowners, raised the funding needed to buy up enough land to thwart the construction of that refinery. And so that's why we see all of this beautiful natural area around us. After Shell Oil abandoned that, Delaware Wildlands and other organizations went on to pass the Delaware Coastal Zone Act, which actually limits development in our coastal zone. And that additional regulatory protection has helped create a beautiful Delaware coastal line.
Yes, it is. And I think it was Governor Minard that worked with that.
Absolutely. We have had a long history of politicians, legislators, yes, absolutely, who recognize the value of these natural resources and what they can do to provide a high quality community life. So we continue to buy land. We actually just work with Newcastle County to protect 225 acres to the north here that will improve water quality and also provide habitat for the very first confirmed population of resident sandhill cranes in the state. So really fun things happening all around.
So it is important to work with government and have that relationship, because nothing can be done alone.
That's right.
Both sides need to work together.
We all have to find new partnerships. We have to engage each other. We have to be doing things differently, more quickly, and in greater partnerships. So absolutely. Reaching out to new partners, to new communities, and realizing we have the same goals.
Well, if there's anything the agenda can ever do for you, we're here for you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for your time,
This is great.
Kate.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.